When we left off last week, Panzer Dragoon's Way had just been released, and fans were clamoring for more. And Team Andromeda was working on something. Something big. So big, it saw a team of almost 50 people working on it, which in the mid-90s was a really big deal. And it was one of Sega's most expensive projects to date. Sadly though, the development team was also met with tragedy, with one member losing his life in a motorcycle accident, and another sadly taking his own. But, in 1998, Team Andromeda's crown jewel would be released in Japan as a ZEL, Panzer Dragoon RPG. But, it would be known throughout the rest of the world as Panzer Dragoon Saga. I cannot begin to describe my feelings towards this game. Getting the chance to play it last year opened my eyes to one of the greatest games of the 5th generation, and one of the greatest RPGs of all time. The story is set after the original and focuses on 15-year-old Edge. What? No, oh come on, we're not gonna do that joke. No, seriously, stop it, Okay, I'm actually impressed you remember that one. But no, Edge is actually a young mercenary being stationed at an excavation site of the Imperials, which is one day attacked by a giant monster, and Edge tries to fight alone, but being a 15-year-old, he gets distracted by certain things. After the monster is defeated, they are met back outside by Imperial Commander Kramen, who has just gone rogue with his Black Fleet, killing Edge's fellow mercenaries and leaving him for dead as they take the mysterious girl. A bright light shines as it descends down the chasm, entering the limp body of Edge, reawakening him. As he emerges out of the water and starts looking around, he discovers a gun from the ancient age, as well as an elevator helping him get back to the surface. But instead of reaching his desired destination, he's instead confronted by more monsters and his gun refuses to work. It's just not been your day, has it, Edge? But luck is once again on his side as a shriek is heard, more blinding light, and lasers strike down his enemies before Edge is met face to face with a dragon. And now you know what game those clips from my intro came from. Using the dragon, he flies back to the excavation site where his dying captain tells him about Kramen, and Edge swears revenge. To control your dragon, you hold down B to have him move forward, and using the 3D control pad to direct him. Pressing A will have your dragon lock on to perform many actions, like breaking item boxes, accessing items, and entering passageways. But when you encounter an enemy is where this game really shines. At the bottom of the screen you will see a circle with 4 segments. These highlight where it's safe and where it isn't to have your dragon. Green means that your dragon is safe from that enemy attacking you, and red means danger. Green is the best place to charge the meters you'll need to attack. When 1 is charged, you can use Edge's gun or the dragon's laser. When 2 are charged, you can use a variety of berserk moves. Using an item also takes up a meter.
I-L-O-V-E, love this battle system. It creates an entire new layer of challenge. You're not just standing around on one side with your foes on the other. You have to decide what that 1 meter should be used for, what position to take. Is there a weak spot? What gun attachment should I use? What form my dragon should I use? All this combined to create an amazing RPG. And a design of the world, your enemies, and the towns you visit are incredibly impressive.
The designs of the village and the color palette give a true feeling of a post-apocalyptic world. But because this game was released in Japan at the beginning of 1998, they knew that a game that features a giant amount of voice work would take ages to properly translate. So localization was done on the real cheap, by just leaving the Japanese audio and plopping in subtitles. Hell, this game wasn't even properly optimized for PAL.
When the game released in the US in May 1998 though, it was released with an initial run of only 6,000 copies that would then sell out. So they sent another shipment of about 12,000 copies, and that too sold out. So they did 12,000 once more. With such a limited run, Saga has become a much sought after for Saturn collectors, with prices going as high as $300 for the game. The game spans 4 discs, making it one of the biggest games made during that generation. And don't think it's just padded full of FMVs, although it does contain them, but the game is filled with so many different locales and missions. Even just ending the first disc I was hooked, where Edge is attacked by a dragon being ridden by the mysterious girl who is now working with Kramen. I consider Saga to be one of the greatest games of all time for numerous reasons. One being that they didn't want to stick to the old conventions of an RPG, or like another company, rest on its laurels. Another being what Andromeda was able to accomplish with the jerry-rigged complexity of the Saturn. But after the Saturn, Team Andromeda disbanded and was reformed back into Sega AM6, which would be known as Smile Bits. I'm willing to bet the Panzer Dragoon game was indeed planned for the Dreamcast, but as we all know, 18 months isn't a real long time to get something made and released, especially when you're working on things like Jet Grind Radio. It's kind of funny that everyone has been begging for a Dreamcast 2 for almost 15 years, ignoring the fact that we basically already got it. In many ways, the original Xbox was what the Dreamcast could have been, helped with the fact that Sega put a lot of great titles in its first year as a third-party developer on the system. Shenmue 2, ToeJam & 3, Crazy Taxi 3, a bunch of great sport titles. And yes, Panzer Dragoon Order.
Holy cow, this is a game. Over a decade on and this game still looks amazing.
I believe this is what Furusawa always visioned when he was making the originals, which is funny considering he played no part in this game. After Saga, Yukio Furusawa actually left Sega to work at Konami, then left after a year to go work at Sony, and then left to go work at Microsoft where he made Phantom Dust, and then left there after 2 years to found Grounding Inc. As for re-releases, the original Panzer was one of a few games that would also get a release in the short-lived Sega PC lineup. That version offers slightly better graphics and would be the basis of the 2 other ports it would see. One released as part of the Japanese-only Sega Ages series on the PS2, and as an unlockable bonus in Orta. Sadly though, no such port of Zwei or Saga exists, and a port of re-release of Saga seems very unlikely. As a lot of things Sega mishandled back in the 90s, Saturn's source code was one of them, with Sagas apparently lost to the times. But there is a glimmer of hope. With his new company Grounding Inc., Yukio has developed Panzer's spiritual sequel, Crimson Dragon, for the Xbox One, and has pretty much confirmed the sequel will be an RPG, much like Saga. He's also expressed interest in remaking the original. While I believe Saga to be the crown jewel of the Saturn, the system had so many other great titles that you couldn't find anywhere else.
Shining Force 3. If you're a fan of games like Fire Emblem, then the third iteration in the Shining series is definitely a great choice for you. In Japan, the game was actually the first chapter of a trilogy, but over here, Scenario 1 will be the only game we get. Guardian Heroes, a treasure-developed beat-em-up featuring numerous characters and some amazing action. Radiant Silvergun, another treasure game. This is one of those bullet hell games and would see a spiritual sequel in Ikaruga, one of the most frequently imported titles on the Saturn. Both it and Guardian Heroes are available now on the Xbox Live Arcade. Shinobi Legends, aka Shinobi X. Using live action cutscenes and pre-rendered sprites, Shinobi slices through enemies to save his sister. Enemy Zero. By the late Kenji Eno and the spiritual sequel to D, Enemy Zero is set on a spaceship that's been invaded by invisible aliens that can kill you instantly. While Sonic would never arrive on the Saturn, the Sega was home to some original side-scrollers. Joining Panzer Dragoon in the launch lineup was Bug, a 2.5D side-scroller about a famous Hollywood bug seeking his big break, and its sequel the following year. Another one is Clockwork Knights 1 and 2, about a toy soldier traversing over the leftovers of Toy Story. Virtua Fighter 2. While the original had issues, the sequel would become one of the most successful games on the Saturn, selling over 2 million copies. Daytona USA Championship Edition. A much smoother frame rate, and this time being able to actually play with another person. And there's even a rare online version through the Saturn Netlink modem. Saturn Bomberman. Old school Bomberman fun with up to 8 people being able to play. And because of how the US version was designed, it is still possible to this day to play this game online through a phone connection. And lastly, Magic Knight Rayearth. Released in the US by legendary localizers Working Design, this game based off the Clamp anime was one of the last Saturn games in the US and was a great adventure game.
And I could go on and on and on. Hell, I could talk for ages just about the racing, fighting, and sport titles. And let's not forget the imports. Oh boy. If you're able to find a Saturn for a good price, I would seriously recommend buying it and checking out some of its titles. 20 years ago, Sega released a system like no other. And I think now it's time it got the appreciation that it truly deserved. Well folks, thank you for watching Saturn Month. I hope you enjoyed it. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to go work on the next episode. And I think you all know what's coming up next. See you then.